The Game Awards, the Oscars of gaming, a day where all the glitz and the glamour of the gaming world gather around to watch ads of all the upcoming games and occasionally celebrate them too. But the 2015 Game Awards held a very unpleasant surprise. Metal Gear Solid 5 was received exceptionally well by both critics and fans, and it came to no one's surprise that it was nominated in many categories of the Game Awards. But when it finally won Best Action Adventure Game, its director and mastermind Hideo Kojima was not there to receive the award as is tradition. He wasn't snubbing the ceremony, nor did he have any scheduling conflicts or a family emergency. No, the truth is actually a lot weirder.
Mr. Kojima had every intention of being with us tonight, but unfortunately he was informed by a lawyer representing Konami just recently that he would not be allowed to travel to tonight's awards ceremony to accept any awards.
Kojima was banned from appearing on the ceremony, and he wasn't just banned by anybody, he was banned by Konami, the company publishing the game that was nominated for so many awards in the first place. And to top it all off, Metal Gear Solid 5 was far from being a complete game. So what happened? What led to this 30-year relationship being obliterated in less than a year? Well, it's complicated. So sit back, relax, grab a soft drink of your choice, and let me tell you the story of how Konami betrayed Kojima. Kojima's relationship with Konami would start all the way back in 1986. Kojima's first job at Konami would see him be assistant designer to the long-awaited sequel to Antarctic Adventure called Penguin Adventure for the MSX. He was initially disappointed with his job, not because he was working on a game called Penguin Adventure, but because the MSX had far reduced gaming capabilities compared to the NES. He was then almost immediately given a directorial role for a little-known game called Metal Gear. This would turn out to be one of the first stealth games ever made. His next game, Snatcher, would be something completely different. It was a visual novel, and despite wanting to make 3 chapters for it, he was only allowed to make 2 due to time constraints. On an unrelated side note, foreshadowing is a literary device. His big break into the mainstream would come in 1998 with Metal Gear Solid. I think this is one of the first games to prove that games were more than toys. Obviously there had been successful games up to that point, but the strong majority of them were purely gameplay focused. I think it was Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid that first tried to appeal to a more mature audience. Metal Gear Solid would launch Konami into the stratosphere. The franchise would see multiple installments and over 60 million copies sold. So when Kojima started development on Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain somewhere in 2011, Kojima could just make Metal Gear Solid another one. Instead, he chose to go bigger, to innovate and go places the stealth genre had never really attempted to go. He wanted to make Phantom Pain an open world game. As far as the audience knew, the game's development was going swimmingly. We even got a small prequel called Ground Zeroes a year before the game launched. Its price was admittedly controversial, but still nothing indicated a rift between the two parties. Adding to the momentum, we got another Kojima project that was announced in between the release of Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain. PT was announced and subsequently launched on the same day on August 12, 2014. It's a demo of a then unannounced project that sees you walking through the same hallway over and over and over again. It was made by a mysterious studio called 77ADS. The community went ballistic over this, not only because it was genuinely scary, but because it had people going crazy over its Easter eggs. You had to do some ludicrous things in order to get some of the Easter eggs in this game, and the gaming community made a collective effort to find them all. It was then revealed that PT was a demo for Silent Hills, a new installment in the iconic franchise, starring Norman Reedus and co-directed by Guillermo del Toro and Hideo Kojima. So everything up to this point seems perfect. Konami was allowing Kojima to do his thing, and Kojima was delivering. It wouldn't be until March of 2015 where things really started to go sour. So Metal Gear Solid 5 was slated for a September 2015 launch. On March of 2015, Kojima said in an interview that this would be the last Metal Gear Solid game. Fair enough, you may think. It was a 30-year-old franchise by that point. Then it was announced that there was a corporate restructuring inside Konami. Again, fairly innocuous stuff as neither Kojima nor his studios were mentioned. Then the bombshell dropped. The Hideo Kojima game tag was quietly removed from the Metal Gear website, as well as promotional material for the Phantom Pain, Ground Zeroes, and the re-release of the older Metal Gear games. If that wasn't enough, the Kojima Productions Los Angeles studio was renamed to simply Konami Los Angeles. When asked why all of this was happening, Konami was kinda chill about it. They said that Kojima and they would continue to make and support Metal Gear games. But later in the same day, we got the whole truth. GameSpot revealed in an article that there was a fallout between Kojima and Konami that led to Kojima and his staff members to have restricted access to corporate internet, emails, and phone calls. And if that wasn't enough, Konami changed the employee status of a lot of the senior staff members of Kojima Productions, including Kojima himself, from full-time employees to contractors. And their contract was running out in December of 2015. And Konami wasn't done. In April of 2015, PT was delisted from all online stores and Silent Hills was cancelled. And not only was PT not available for download, you couldn't re-download it even if you had got it before it got delisted. This made PS4s with PT on them somewhat of a rare collector's item that made them skyrocket in price. With a little bit of luck, you can probably still sell a base PS4 with PT on it for the price of a brand new PS5. So PT was gone, Silent Hills was dead, what about Metal Gear Solid 5? Well, we got the announcement that Kojima would still be involved in the making of the game. However, a job listing was already up for a post-Kojima Metal Gear game. According to the then new Konami president Hideki Hayakawa, all of this was happening due to Konami's new mobile-first approach. And while I hate how this entire situation was handled, it was getting clear that a change was indeed needed at Konami. Silent Hill had lost its luster after so many games, even though I refuse to believe a Kojima Silent Hill game wouldn't have sold like hotcakes. The Castlevania reboot didn't do particularly well, PES had decisively lost the battle to FIFA, and the only reliable franchise they had left was Metal Gear. And even that was getting expensive. It was reported by Nikkei that Phantom Pain's budget exceeded $80 million. That's a big risk to take. And while Hayakawa would pull back on his statement slightly, saying that Konami wouldn't abandon the console and PC market, Konami was slowly abandoning all of its IPs. And Metal Gear was another in a long list of franchises that needed to be sidelined in favor of maximizing profit. We're now about a month out of the Phantom Pain's release, and another report was published, this time about the working conditions of the company. Nikkei once again made a scathing report on Konami and the abysmal morale ahead of the Phantom Pain's launch. The situation at Konami was described as Orwellian. It was reported that cameras were installed to monitor the movement of the workers there, as well as publicly announcing the names of anybody who stayed on a lunch break for too long. Even social media posts were being monitored, as it was described that anybody who liked a certain employee's Facebook post about leaving the company was internally reshuffled. Those reshufflings could include roles completely different than what they were hired for, like being security guards or part of the cleaning staff at Konami's fitness clubs, or roles at a pachinko slot factory. Nobody was apparently safe either. Even senior staff members could be reshuffled, as it became apparent from a 2013 interview of an ex-Konami employee. So, team morale could only be described as a purple down arrow in PES. Konami and Kojima were having a very public fallout, but the show had to go on. On September 1st, 2015, Metal Gear Solid 5 was finally released, and despite the massive warning signs, it's actually a brilliant game. The freedom it offers in combat encounters hasn't really been matched even a decade after its launch. Its story, however, even though it has impressive spectacle, is a bit of a mess. Let me explain. I'll be spoiling the Phantom Pain, so you can skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid it, although it's a pretty important part of the Kojima-Konami puzzle. So, for its first 20 to 30 hours, the Phantom Pain flows like any other game. You reach the final boss, you fight a giant mech, and you stop the evil plans of the bad guy. All in all, it's solid stuff, but a bit hollow for the final game of a franchise. It doesn't put a bow on things. It's like watching a random episode of Batman the Animated Series. Batman will probably stop the villain by the end of the episode, but there won't be a more conclusive end to the series as a whole. But then, it's revealed that this was just the ending of Chapter 1, and all of a sudden, you're dropped into Chapter 2 with a few new characters and a whole new issue to deal with. This is where things start to get weird. Chapter 2 feels largely undercooked. Missions are reused, character arcs are solved with audio logs, and the game essentially limps towards its actually really good ending. If you know the story behind the game, it's a sort of you can feel the creative control being whisked away from Kojima in real time. We don't know how much of an effect this power struggle had on the game, but this couldn't have been Kojima's full creative vision. To add fuel to the fire, a bonus disc for the collector's edition of the game contained early development footage of a mission cut from the game. It was about dealing with Eli after he hijacked the Sahelanthropus, something that was never resolved in the full game itself. Also, data miners found title cards for a Chapter 3, which also didn't make the game's full release. Now, this is where we have to start speculating. It's obvious that Metal Gear Solid 5 had a lot of cut content, but every game has cut content. More content is probably cut than ever gets in a game in most cases. The question is how much of that content being cut was Kojima's choice and how much was a result of being forced out of the studio. We'll probably never know. Strong NDAs appear to be in place, and I doubt either side will break them anytime soon. As crazy as it may sound due to how good the Phantom Pain was, the game still remains as one of gaming's greatest what-ifs. And despite all that, the game was a success on every level. So much so that it got multiple award nominations at that year's Game Awards in December. That's where Konami had one final gift for Hideo Kojima. As we saw in the beginning of the video, Kojima wasn't allowed to attend the ceremony nor receive any awards that the Phantom Pain won. And that was sort of it. A 30-year-old relationship ended with the least amount of grace possible. So almost 10 years after the debacle, how is everybody doing? Let's start with Konami. Remember that post-Kojima Metal Gear game listing? Well, 2 years after the Phantom Pain's release, they published Metal Gear Survive, a survival game that was received abysmally. It probably showed them that they couldn't cash in on the Metal Gear brand by releasing new games and slapping its branding onto them. So, they've resorted to re-releasing the old Metal Gears over and over again. To give credit where it's due though, Konami Sift did work. They raked in over 300 billion yen in revenue in 2024, with their Yu-Gi-Oh! And eFootball mobile games proving to be major successes. Their pachinko machines are also bringing in a few hundred million yen per year. Konami is also slowly trying to rebuild its good faith with the public that it forcibly tore down back in 2015, with both the remake of Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill The Short Message being fairly well received. Kojima, on the other hand, turned this whole situation into a massive win for himself. Soon after his Konami deal expired, he was picked up by Sony, given his own studio, and from my understanding, given free reign to make whatever he wanted. And what he wanted to make was the first Strand type game. Death Stranding was a polarizing game at launch that has become more appreciated as time passes. The reason for this entire video being made is the release of its sequel, which somehow looks even more weird and absurd than the original. And hey, in 2016's Game Awards, Kojima did finally receive his award from a very emotional Jeff Keighley as well as a standing ovation. So in the end, and while I still hate how this whole situation was handled by Konami, it did turn out to be a win-win situation for both sides. Konami gets to make a lot of money, Kojima gets to make whatever pleases him, and we as the players get to deliver packages while talking about a variety of philosophical concepts. Thank you for watching this video. Polygon did some excellent reporting on the matter back in 2015, and this video would have been a lot more difficult to make without the recounting of the events. The Switch 2 video is still coming out, as well as a deep dive into the miserable history of Superman games following that. So subscribe if you're interested in that, and until then, you can click here to watch the history of the Doom games, including John Carmack comparing video game stories to stories of rated R content, Steve Jobs presenting Doom 3's engine, Doom 2016 almost being a Call of Duty ripoff, and more. See you in the next one.